We're all on this planet together, so join Odyssey and find your one thing. While summer is a great time for recycling, some summer items should not be mixed in with your curbside recycling. Items like garden hoses, plastic planters, pool toys, squirt guns, and lawn chairs are generally not recyclable and are best donated to charity. If you have a question as to whether an item can be recycled, look for the recycling triangle and number, usually on the bottom of the product. Join Odyssey, and together, each of us doing one thing makes a greener tomorrow. What's your one thing?
CuriosityStream has thousands of documentary films and shows on demand on any device. We're the Netflix for nerds, the Hulu for history buffs, the Disney Plus for the scientist in us. Back to school means getting 25% off annual plans at CuriosityStream. That's a little over $1 a month for thousands of brain-boosting documentaries. Hurry, sale ends Monday.
We gotta sing it!
Matt Clement, we just like to kick a bunch of things around with Matt. Good morning to you, Matt. How's everything?
Everything's good. Major League Baseball's got to be pretty excited. We're pretty close to a wild card Red Sox, Yankees, and Padres, Dodgers. Who would have thought?
I know.
Going into the year, it could be that I don't know if they'd rather have that for a one-game wild card or they'd rather have the series for those.
You're right about that. They'd probably rather have.
They'd like to get it all 3 rounds, I think, Matt. If they could work that out, they just keep progressing through each round against each other.
But you're a noted fantasy football expert, you tell me, huh?
Maybe not an expert, but aficionado.
What? Oh. Wait, we're having our draft. Chris Muller put it all together for our inner office sort of situation. We have that next Tuesday. So if people ask you for fantasy football advice, what is Matt Clement's fantasy football advice here?
Oh, my fantasy football advice. Well, there's the generic advice. Don't draft a quarterback early.
Okay.
And on the sense of a quarterback, get a running quarterback.
Okay.
Longer you wait, the better, and get a running quarterback. And your 2 consolation prizes this year are Trey Lance and Justin Fields that you can get after the fact, after the first big 5 or 6 of them that run. And it depends where you draft and what kind of league you're in. There's 4 gigantic tight ends this year if you include Kyle Pitts, the rookie. And again, if you don't get one of them, wait and get somebody later on, which there's a whole list of good ones to go with. And take the best available up until that point, and don't panic about making sure you get 3 or 4 running backs. That day of fantasy football where you have to have a million running backs is gone. You can take none in the first 5 rounds and have a really good team at the end of it.
Listen to this guy. He's got a whole draft board put together.
He's legit. He's going to be on ESPN.
I'm gonna pay you to come draft the team for the Fan Morning Show team for our fantasy football thing, Matt. This is impressive.
Well, you're generic. It was a generic. I had to give you the generic version. We can talk other weeks about some players, maybe.
Okay. Matt Clement with his former Major League pitcher every Wednesday at 7 o'clock here on the Fan Morning Show. Let's get back to baseball for just a couple of minutes. And the whole Javi Baez, Lindor, New York Mets thumbs down thing. What did you take away from all of that?
Well, Lindor's representatives got him turned the right way real quick. I saw his post on Twitter yesterday apologizing for what went down, and it's a as a player, it's really hard to get booed, and it's something that guys at that level aren't used to getting booed, and it's another level of being booed when you're a team that, they were in first place most of the first half into the second half that now is basically tanked at the end of this right now with expectations, the New York expectations, living in the shadow of the Yankees, who at the same time right now as they're tanking and just won 12 in a row. And there's a sense of pride and you just don't, sometimes you just make some stupid decisions on how to act, and you start talking in the clubhouse about, man, I can't believe this, and we're out here doing this, and that's the respect we're getting. But it's part of the game. It's part of the fans' right to have those expectations, and so what? And probably not a smart move on their part, especially with Baez being a free agent coming up this year. But at the same time, I think that there'll still be a few teams that still bid for him.
Text us, Edgar Snyder and Associates fan text line 412-928-9370. Edgar Snyder and Associates reminds you to text responsibly. Like if you're in the clubhouse and he does that, though, and that's the meaning behind it, Shouldn't it be someone's job to police the clubhouse and be like, hey, listen, you're making us all look bad. We don't want to do this, man.
Yeah, it should be. But sometimes, you get sitting at a table and you're talking and the frustration is already boiling out because, let's be honest, when they traded for him, they thought that, they traded for him. They thought that this was going to be, the thing that put them over the hump. And unfortunately, and Lindor was coming back off his injury, and that was kind of like a dream scenario in the middle of the infield. They have the good pitching staff that they have and everything else. And sometimes you don't even realize it's going to happen. You're sitting there, you're talking about it. Oh, we should boo them, and a couple people walking by hear it, and a couple people laugh about it and say, "Yeah, you're right." And next thing you know, you get on base and you start pulling it out, and everybody's like, "Yeah, he said we're going to boo him. Let's do it." And it kind of like a snowball rolling down the hill that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And sometimes with respect to the other guys in that clubhouse that could have stopped it, maybe didn't even realize it was going to go down. The inside story on that is probably something we'll never really know.
Matt Clement with us here on the Fan Morning Show. Let me put you inside a different clubhouse. Let me put you inside a clubhouse where you're young, a lot of the guys in the club are young, and you see a veteran sticking around, hanging on, and the club's trying to give him every chance he can to get things right. They keep plugging him into the lineup every day, but he's hitting 200, striking out half the time. And at a certain point, you start talking with some of the younger guys, maybe some of your draft mates who are still at lower levels in the minors, and you're all talking about, man, this guy's he's keeping us from getting our ABs. He's keeping us from getting time in the field and proving what we're capable of doing. Have you ever been in that situation? And does that resemble at all what you think it may have been like as some of the young guys were watching Gregory Polanco hang on and hang on and hang on here in Pittsburgh?
Well, I think that, I think what happens in that situation is the people that get those chances are usually guys that don't ruffle feathers and don't boo the fans
Right.
and put the thumbs down. And there's a respect level that comes from the club. And there's also this, we talked a little bit about Polanco last week. There is this, unfortunately the injury has kind of shot his arm in that situation, but there is this piece of work that you've seen that there has been glimpses of in the past, as we saw like the day he cleared waivers and he had the 3-for-4 game. There's this glimpse of this person. He's he's a veteran because he's been around, but he's still young. And I think there's a respect that goes through. Sure, there's the dude that's sitting in AAA saying, "What the heck, man? If he's gone, that's my spot, and I start getting minimum, and I'm going to get my money and everything else." I'm sure it's getting talked about, yeah. But at the same time, I think that clubs usually give that respect to that veteran player that's done well for them in the past and not caused problems. You usually don't see somebody that causes problems getting that third, fourth, and fifth chance, unless it's on a pennant contender that they think they might help them out in a pinch and a pennant.
Yeah, it's all great. I don't care about Polanco. Najee Harris in this fantasy football stuff. What are people doing with Najee Harris? Are they drafting him early or not?
Yeah, he's at the end of the first, probably like the 12th pick through about the first 6 to 8 in the second round. And the question, obviously, being in Pittsburgh, it's how good is this offensive line going to be? If you're going to knock them, that's the first thing they're going to say.
This guy's an expert.
And is that? But I think that you can probably go, and there's probably about 5 running backs in the NFL that have a chance for 350 plus touches. And if you're doing a point per catch league, then you got to take a chance on him, especially if you're living in Pittsburgh. He's going to go a lot earlier in Pittsburgh than if you're drafting in Texas.
You know what this reminds me of? Right here, this segment that's going on. You know how you turn on and you flip through the channels and you see Brad Doherty, the former Cleveland Cavaliers center, doing NASCAR?
Yeah.
This is Matt Clement. You need to approach our boss here, and you need to approach Odyssey, the main company, and be like, I am your fantasy football expert. What did you do for a living? Well, I was a baseball pitcher, but I know everything about fantasy
You're
football.
You're a baseball pitcher. What do you do now? Well, I coach high school basketball.
Right.
Pretty big school. You're pretty successful, but wait. You're a fantasy football expert? Yeah, that's kind of what I do.
Why? How did you have some deep sort of understanding for this, and why did you decide that this was like some kind of passion of yours?
Well, I started doing fantasy football when I was like in 7th grade with one of my friends. He brought it home he found it somewhere in a magazine or whatever, and 6 of us got together, and it's just something I've enjoyed doing every year since then. And it's a fun time of the year. NFL is my favorite sport to watch, and fantasy football has a lot to do with it. And the strategy behind it, I guess that GM strategy behind it is the kind of the you can be a mini GM without anybody booing you, I guess.
This is fantastic.
People
incredible. Listen, everybody out there, you need to start tweeting at Fan Morning Show every Wednesday morning your fantasy football questions, and we're going to put it to Matt every Wednesday.
Hashtag Clement FF. Here we go. Yes.
We can start next week because all the drafts will be done at least.
There it is.
All
He's
right,
on
we can
board.
start next week. Send us your Matt Clement fantasy football questions. What else you got going on? Have you started basketball practice as of yet?
Yeah, we're starting basketball. Actually, tonight is our first open gym for the fall. We did a few in August. I'm really proud of it. We have a really unique group of kids. I have 9 or 10 for a 6A school. Having 9 or 10 kids that play 3 sports is on your basketball roster of 18 to 24 is a lot. And I think last year I had 25, and 23 of them played at least 2.
Wow.
And for me, that makes it harder to do a lot of the stuff in the summer you like to do. We did some stuff in the summer, but not as much as I wanted to. So we did a little bit in August, and we're starting up here in the fall. I have a pretty veteran group back of kids that have played a lot of big playoff games and played with 6 defenders on the court over the last couple of years.
We've heard.
So
yes.
So we don't have to put the 6-man defense in yet. So that saves me a little open gym time.
Perfect. Good. Yeah, right.
Save
you don't
that
have to
for the
install.
playoffs.
We already know that one. We already know that one. Thank you, Matt. Stay safe, by the way. The rain is just incredible, and roads are washed out and flooded all over the place. So if you don't have to be anywhere, don't go anywhere. And if you do have to be somewhere, take it safe, all right?
Ugly day out there. Have a good day, guys.
All right,
talk
we'll
to you
see
next week,
Matt Clement. We have overturned.
I'm legit excited to
talk.
talk fantasy football with Matt Clement every week now.
This is something. We have found something.
Because here's the thing. Usually you get those fantasy football guys on the air, and it turns into just a litany of you're reading questions for them from listeners, which is fine.
And they're nerds that never played anything.
Well, it's not even that part of it. It's that they'll read off this guy or that guy, take that guy. This guy or that guy, take that. No, Matt was actually giving us reasoning is that, listen, you want to draft Najee Harris, but if you live in Pittsburgh or if you're drafting with Steeler fans, you better realize you're going to have to get him a couple rounds earlier. He's giving legitimate insight, but then concerned about the offensive line. I'm legitimately excited to talk fantasy football with Matt every week.
Do you think he'd bring that heat there, producer Matt?
Absolutely.
Oh, you did? You knew he knew
the
man about fantasy football?
Once he texted you that he was interested in talking fantasy football.
it was vague. It was like, hey, by the way, I know a little about fantasy football. I'd be willing to talk about that. So, bang. This guy should have been gone to Yale or Harvard or somewhere. He's insanely brilliant.
He does. Look, when NBA comes around and we actually talk a little bit of NBA, he's obviously all over that as a basketball coach. You know he can talk baseball. He played in the damn league.
The only thing, he can't count because he put 6 guys on the floor against North Allegheny.
Some minor infraction.
That's the only thing.
On Pod Save the World, we want to be your cheat sheet for global events. My name is Tommy Vitor, and each week, my co-host Ben Rhodes and I break down the biggest stories from around the world. Ben and I both worked on President Obama's national security staff, and we'll introduce you to the activists, politicians, and journalists who can help us understand what's going on around the world, what it means for the United States, and what it's like being inside the White House Situation Room during a crisis.
Listen on Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your pods.
The COVID-19 pandemic showed us how a microscopic virus could upend our lives. There is so much out there that we need to understand. But for every threat, there are heroes working at the edges of science and policy to protect us. I'm Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, former Detroit Health Director and host of Crooked Media's America Dissected. Every episode, I talk to the doctors, scientists, culture makers, and policy leaders who are working out new ways to protect us against our biggest threats. New episodes of America Dissected every Tuesday. Listen on Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, I'm Peter Bukowski, host of the Locked On Today podcast. Trying to stay on top of every big story in sports is a full-time job. I know, because it is my full-time job. But it's not yours. That's why we have a network of local experts ready to give you the inside scoop on everything you truly need to know in the sports world, and we do it every day to make sure you're always caught up on the latest and greatest in sports. Listen to the Locked On Today podcast every day on the Odyssey app or wherever you get podcasts.